blatant, explicit anthropometry analysis, anthropometric analysis that's explained. It's going to happen any other but in West African.
Even Pontus Skolin that kind of pushes the Paleo-American model of like replacement or whatever. When they brought Nielsen's information to him, where Nielsen said, "Well, we haven't found any ancient specimens with these markers," Skolin agreed. Yes, to prove our case, we have to find ancient specimens. We need more archaeological evidence. We need to find ancient specimens that carry these markers. Otherwise, the whole argument is pretty much in limbo.
Yeah, it's redundant.
Because why? Because we also see these skeletal and skull structures among Native Americans, among people with Native American markers. Because why do they need to find more archaeological evidence? Because we find these same skeletal and skull structures among Native Americans, among people with Native American markers.
So the probability is there shift the other way with what is observable versus what isn't. Right? We have to find more. We need more data. We need more evidence, more information, more evidence.
Occam's razor.
Yeah.
Occam's razor. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Occam's razor. The correct path is the one with the least resistance. To suppose what you guys are saying, you have to go through all these hoops and obstacles when we already have a path, clearly laid out. Especially,
and most importantly, ours is if I could just say this, ours is rooted in a want, a need, a hunger for science and being unbiased.
Exactly.
Whereas the other position is rooted in inferiority complex, racial superiority complexes, and all that. So that's where that comes from versus what we are doing.
Also, it's rooted in a methodology and in a discipline. It's a scientific discipline because we don't get our information from one source, but from one discipline, but a variety of established disciplines by anthropologists, historians, craniologists, biologists. We get these disciplines from different places. While the other side, what discipline do you honestly have? What methodology do you have? How do you differ from fiction? How do you peer review your information? Who's peer reviewing your information? There are more questions than answers on the other side.
Say the last part again.
No, I'm saying like there are more questions than answers on the other side. There isn't. The other side does not have a discipline. There isn't a discipline to cross-reference your information. There isn't.
Well, I'll give that. A lot of people don't have a systematic approach to knowing how they come up to their conclusions.
We take note of dates too. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we try to stay up to date with the latest scientific articles that are published. We're supposed to. They will pull up articles from like 1998, bro. Like, come on.
Shit, not even 1998. Like the 19th century. They'll pull out fucking European niggas.
The 1930s several times.
Yeah, they'll pull articles from European people, but science is white man's from the 19th century. Makes no damn sense.
It doesn't matter where it comes from as long as it's true. White,
oh yeah, we agree with that. We agree with that. We agree with that. That's not the argument. The problem is the contradiction. That when we present our arguments and our scientific facts, when we present our facts, we're accused of supporting white man's. But these are the same people who will pull up a fact or who will pull up a article or a study from like 1889 and it's written by a European. That's the hypocrisy.
From people who were definitely racist.
Right. Like that was the highlight of scientific racism, and you're accusing, people accuse us of going with the white man's, but you're going with a white man in like 1888.
Well,
like that's your standard of evidence.
But are they saying that based on the fact
saying that simply to discredit what we're putting forth.
Exactly.
And part of this is the fact that when you bring up black intelligence, black evolutionary biology, black geneticists, they're all cool. Supposedly, they're all cool.
They're all house niggas. They're all Uncle Toms. They're all everything. But again, it's the same people pulling up these Leo Weiner articles from like the 1880s and saying that, well, he said that, you know, he must have been one of the white guys that knew what was up. So, you know, he's cool because he agrees with our nonsensical position.
Leo Weiner said that Australians were
an
in a savage race at that.
And here's another thing they do. They will pull an old argument or an old study, but how science works, when you gather information from a study, sometimes it'll take a subsequent or another study to study the information gathered from that study, right? They will completely disregard the study that is confirming or denying the previous study and just go with the previous study because it suits their argument.
Well, and that's the reason why I brought up the first thing. It wasn't because just by virtue of it being all automatically wrong. No, it's that the current diet is built on top of old. And so, for example, like it's been fairly recent, correct? It's been fairly recent that the spectrum of Native American morphology has even been taken into consideration to begin with, because that's
correct.
In the 2000s,
but you can't eliminate a source because of age. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's what we're saying.
Like I wasn't asking this because it's old. I was trying to say it in the context that it is older because all the new knowledge that we have today is built on the old. And so an example of that, which I was just bringing up right now, is that for example, it's fairly recent, like I was like 3 years old, that the entirety of the spectrum in Native Americans called morphology.
It was like 2011, 2013 when they said, okay, let's look at all Native American morphology.
Pull up any article from 2002 or 2005, it would explicitly say, oh, Paleo-Americans. Nope, not a single Paleo-American skull matches modern Native. You see what I'm saying? So,
right, like for about 30 years, they were supporting the Paleo-American population replacement model, and now we're seeing that that's not the case.
I mean, they weren't doing it blatantly. They weren't doing it blatantly because we still already had genetics established by that. So they weren't doing it blatantly, but they were suggesting that based on skull structure, on that discipline, on craniometry, that it pointed us a certain direction. And then you've got recent rebuttals to that. This is how we learn that has to go into detail and explaining how that way of looking at it is incorrect because there is a spectrum to it.
Because even then they were saying it's going to take further study to confirm that, but people they disregard that was even said. You know, that it was only a suggestion or it was only a supposition. And then they completely disregard the new studies that test that model, because there's studies that directly test the Paleo-American model.
And also there's studies that debunk it. Like I've read studies from like the 1990s where they go hard saying that there had to be a different specimen other than like the other than the ancestors of the Native Americans, the Paleo Indians. There had to be somebody. You know, it couldn't have been them because the skull structures did not match or whatever arguments they wanted to present. But we see now today that that's not necessarily the case, that we have a population continuity. And the genetics and the skull morphology and the body morphology, that's all that it demonstrates, a population continuity from one group in Siberia.
Nobody conclusively has shown that either there were some other people that mixed to create what we see now, or there was no people group that you would consider African that was found here that predates what we already know.
Or
right.
Or for a period. We're not picking on the Africans, just for a period.
Just for like it could.
Yeah, so I mean, like we're not picking on the Africans, right? Yeah, or for a period. So if a Scandinavian was
You gotta understand.
That's what it seems like, though. It seems like there's a lot. And it's just my what I see. A lot of y'all come at people, and it's like a lot of racial undertones with this shit.
Well, that's only because this specific group is about the Aboriginal flag hypothesis, whereas if we were in a group that deals with the solution hypothesis, you're going to see a bunch of white guys on there, claiming that they would have been the first, and they'll use outdated articles about Kennewick land and capital group flags.
I mean, if you want to talk about like racial undertones, then I'm pretty sure you're not blind to the fact that the other side goes around calling these people invaders, Mongolian invaders, Siberian invaders. Like that's blatant racist like that's not even undertones, that's just blatantly fucking racist.
And white, when some of them don't even fuck with white people like that.
Exactly.
I see what you're saying. So, got you. I mean, I don't know who started the racial shit in the group. I see it on both sides. I'm just telling you, I got in the group. That was the first thing that came at me was negative.
It was the abos, because people wouldn't have that audacity to come into a black group and just start calling people, out of their name. It was people, when they get debunked, start calling people Neanderthal and all kind of other stupid shit. And then people just return fire. Word.
Let me ask you this, because this is what I was wondering.
But hold on, let me say this. But it does create an environment for when other people who are new here, when they come and just see the back and forth, people who just want to say some stupid shit, it's the perfect environment for them to just get off some stupid shit they always wanted to say to someone.
Right.
So you're saying
actually racism, really like that one girl. I think she's deaf, and that's why she can't talk right online. But she said the N-word, right? And obviously, that doesn't speak just because she said that doesn't speak for every other, Native American that wouldn't even say that at all,
Right.
That was my next comment. You don't see nobody in our circle doing that shit. That's most of the people you see doing that extra shit is people who are new to the group.
Or they're just they're abos and they're just on that like, oh, you guys are fucking invaders and you guys killed our people. You killed grandma, like that Chada bitch. You killed grandma. It's all about grandma. Cause Halito. Yeah, she's the first one to talk that shit. So you see the animosity mainly on the abos because they don't like to be debunked. They're searching for their identity and they want to claim a culture and identity that does not belong to them. And we were born in these cultures, so it's disrespectful.
Yep.
Point blank, period. You can't claim something that's not yours. I feel like that's a universal principle.
Especially when the house is already occupied.
Exactly.
In the house. You can't go in the house and be like, this is my shit. When there's people living these cultures.
So, well, I agree with you. I don't think you should claim a culture that's not yours. I just, from what I'm seeing, it's still debatable whether or not that's culture. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's debatable whether or not that culture is. And I think that with DNA, it's making it, because that was also a claim, I won't name names, and I do adhere to this, that even with the DNA game, even that shit is kind of shuffled around. Because there are some haplotypes.
No.
Explain how you still
feel like it's debatable.
How do you take 500 different cultures and languages? You take it and the original population or the original people that have it don't have it at all. How is that even possible within the past 300, 400 years?
It's a clear reason why Black Americans don't have it. So that's obvious. What I'm saying is, though, it's like even with genetics, right? There's haplogroups that Africans share with Native Americans. Is that true or false?
False.
Okay. Why is that so?
Because any haplogroup that people may share today, this is all after 1500s, modern migrations all throughout the world. Everybody's been everywhere.
No, I didn't say today. I'm saying I didn't say today.
right. Okay, so yeah. So I would get into that. So in the context of indigenous populations, like haplogroups that are indigenous to West Africa or any part of anywhere outside of Northeast Asia, haplogroups that are anywhere outside of Northeast Asia are not found. No, they are not found neither in ancient American skeletons nor isolated finds.
All you gotta look is haplogroup C and haplogroup Q, and that's not in Western Africa. You're not gonna find those there.
I mean, it's not outside.
Well, no, but I know C you can't find. You find outside of Africa exclusively.
What's that?
No, I said I know C you find outside of Africa exclusively.
Well, almost all haplogroups except
for what A,
B, and E, and probably paragroup DE was at one point in Africa, and maybe even D.
Because DE is one of the oldest. Yeah.
But the ones that stuck around was A, B, and then every other haplogroup.
And I wasn't talking about just how Africans or African. I wasn't.
What's that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, say the last part again, what you have to say.
I just said that pretty much every other haplogroup that is not A, B, and E is found outside of Africa.
Exactly. I'm telling you, you're not gonna find Q or C there. C is exclusively out of Africa, and the closer you get to Siberia, the closer you're going to see these haplogroups. It's just what it is.
A, B, and E is something that both share.
They don't share B.
You're mixing up maternal haplogroups with
Y DNA. You're not going to find B amongst Native Americans in the Americas.
Even let me just say this before the conversation goes further. We're not even talking about specific subcase of these haplogroups. We're just very generalizing, very general A, B, A.
Right. Because there's a specific subclass of specific mutations.
When you get specific mutations, just because Australians have C and Mongolians have C doesn't mean that it's the same C that
exactly
eventually developed in the region.
No, I never said that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in case the conversation gets into detail, I don't want it to be like, oh, so now you're saying that it's not the specific subclase, because that does matter, but yeah.
And the ABC you're talking about, I think, is Y DNA that's in Africa, right? And then the ABC and all that is maternal haplogroups that we see in the Americas.
Right.
That's correct. Like you're gonna.
The maternal Africa is elves and paragroup M. I believe, I think M is already in the Middle East somewhere, or whatever. But it's a lot like that.
The main factor is like haplogroup, the specific haplogroup, because again, Hunter is right. We're being very general with this, and you may see there are some subclasses of haplogroup C that you may not see in certain populations, but they are still part of that group. And if you look at haplogroup C, it is the one haplogroup definitely that you're not going to find in Africa. You're not going to find it.
I know that.
But back to this question, I wasn't talking about just Africans or African Americans losing their language in America. How do you teach 500 different cultures and languages, and all these traditions within the time frame allowed? How does that happen? And then leave the original people without any whatsoever? It don't make sense.
I don't think anybody is saying that the people now don't have any. I don't think that was ever, or was it?
No. I'm talking about, because obviously the Native Americans, there's over 500 different tribes with their languages, different cultures, different cosmologies, different spiritual systems, right? There's 500 of them that people have been practicing for generation to generation, handed down to them. How were all these, I guess, faked or stolen, and at the same time leaving the original people, according to the Aboriginals, or the Aboriginal or Abos, and leave them with absolutely none. How is that even possible?
Now, to be fair, the United States, the Black American population in particular, lost a lot, right?
Right.
And even as much as they lost, though, African American English, African
vernacular, yeah.
At the end of the day, it's still tied directly to West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Dialect and words, certain words, right? And that's just for the vast majority that are not from maybe they're not Pulikichi or not Maroons or not from Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? Like once you get to that, they even get a hella stronger time to voodoo and Ifa. You know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
correct.
Even again, and I'm talking about the population that got hit the hardest. You know what I'm saying? And then you go to Afro-Latinos in Latin America, and them it's like West Africa on steroids.
That's right. That is correct.
But wait. To answer your question, though, if you're talking,
I'm saying like okay, there's still people we typically identify as Native American looking that speak Nahuatl or Aztec or Sioux and all this stuff, right? But you don't find people that look like African Americans or Africans that are over here speaking those languages or carrying those cultures. And the ones that you do are not making the claims that these Abos are making because they're connected to these actual tribes.
But that's a false comparison because those people didn't go anywhere. Like if I'm in 2008. No, I'm being objective. Those people didn't go anywhere. However, it does not mean that they did not get customs, language, and culture from.
Well, if the Abos are correct, they didn't go. If the Abos are correct, they didn't go anywhere either. They always been here.
Okay, the Abo shit, like I said, that shit is new to me.
That question right there.
That's not the same as far as like Paleolithic. We talked about Paleolithic America a lot. We talked a lot about Paleolithic America. If we were talking about Paleolithic America, it's because there was going to be some Abo claim around there, you know, because otherwise we would have focused on pre-Columbus, directly pre-Columbus, and we would have wanted to talk about trade items, and we would have wanted to talk about boat technology.
Right, cultural exchanges.
Yeah, cultural exchanges, linguistic ties, and all that. But we talked a lot about the Paleolithic era, and it's something that we would have gone in the direction that a lot of the proponents in this group go to, you know, which is that they've been here forever, and
with no cultural ties.
No, but just like I was showing, is that the only thing that, and I admit this, the only thing that makes it a tough argument for the so-called Abos and even myself is the DNA aspect. Once you get outside of DNA, like with phenotypes and language and culture.
Well,
no, it's not just the DNA.
What? Explain when you're done with that. Explain my question then. How was that possible?
And I'm going to explain it. Because it's not a matter of teaching at one time. Like cultures and customs that overlap across different people in the world. It's not about teaching all of them at once. But I'll get to that. What I'm saying is outside of
mind you, there's probably like 500 different languages and cultures. So you would have to develop all these and distribute them, within the time frame allowed.
But this is the thing, like when I say, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful, but when I say this custom is not native, and I ask people, well, give me an example, like with language. If you're writing this shit, then that's not something that's native to that region of those people that are writing it. And then speaking.
Why not?
If your indigenous custom symbols there were no letters, let me explain. If there were no letters in this region before another group of people came, and you start speaking something other than what you originally did, and what you're doing now is not native, it's a hybrid.
Right, but you would have to provide the example of that scenario. When did that scenario happen and with who?
The Aztecs. What was the Aztecs' original form of communication?
But you said before another group of people came. What group of people was the ones that came?
I think it's getting there. Talking about that. So elaborate on that. What were you gonna say that? Okay, the Aztecs what?
I can't say that again.
Yeah, I think that's where because Joseph asked, essentially what since you alluded to a population input, right? Linguistic input or whatever. I think that's where you were going, right? What were you gonna say about that? You were saying that
an example being the Aztecs. What was their original form of communication?
So are you asking if they have writing? They didn't have an extent. By the time that the Spaniards came, they did have some form of writing of hieroglyphs, but they weren't as advanced. Like they were mostly what is the word?
It was mostly like what, pictographs.
That's not
the
pictographs.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Right. Pictographs. So what I'm saying is, if you're talking about language, a spoken language, this language that they're speaking now, if they're claiming to from these people in that area, is not the same as the natives that you're talking about.
How?
A change has to occur.
You're saying that the modern Mala language is not the same as the one that Aztecs would have spoke, or the ancestors would have spoke. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying the people that subscribe to speak the language that
we had this debate a couple of days ago. He's implying that Utah Aztecan is not a native language, that it was brought in by, I guess he was talking about Hebrews or something.
Oh wow. Have fun with that.
Okay.
I mean, you say, wait, hold on. You say F all that, but I'm asking what caused the change from pictographs to letters?
They never really developed further than. I mean, they weren't exactly just ideographs either. They did synthesize different symbols together to create a syllabogram, just like the mining did. It was just that aesthetically speaking, it wasn't as cryptic. It wasn't as cool. You know what I'm saying? Like the Mayans, they did encrypted shit with other goods, whereas the Aztec was more like just side by side. You know what I'm saying?
And this is one of the reasons that the general Native American community sees the perspective that comes from that, people that come from that perspective, they see it as racist, because you're implying that the Egyptians or whoever could.
Right, the Canaanites went to Mexico and taught these people or some shit.
Not just that, but not just that, but they were capable of developing a language system or a writing system without help, without influence. But somehow the Aztecs and the people over here needed someone to come teach them.
Right.
I never said any of that.
No, I'm not saying you did, but those are arguments I've heard from Hebrews. Personally, I've heard those arguments from Hebrews when they like to talk about how they found some pictograph in like in Mexico, in southern Mexico or something like that, and how it relates to the Aramaic language. It's ridiculous. Like they made those arguments that supposedly Hebrews traveled and went to Mexico and taught these people how to write in that system. I'm not asserting you're making that argument. I'm saying I've heard Hebrews specifically make that ridiculous argument.
And I've heard West Africans who were not the pyramid builders of Egypt, claiming that that Native Americans were. There's no way by virtue of them not being black, of having been capable of building these monuments and pyramids.
Right. They needed help from people from Kemet.
So somehow people in the Levant or Northeast Africa could develop to the point that they built these and language systems and all that in their civilization naturally, but somehow it couldn't naturally happen here in the Americas.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense because there was mound and there was all types of structures here without any African, should I say?
Right.
We agree with that.
It wasn't directly linked to Africa. You know what I'm saying? It's not even about shit, but if there was
now what you did show that was pretty interesting, and I haven't got a chance to look into the Noal language itself and see if those are actual cognates. But you showed some cognates between Semitic language and Aztec or whatever.
Yeah, the cognates are similar. And well, let me just say this to address it. It's not, well, for me, it's not about racism. What I'm saying is the indigenous people here, whether we want to subscribe it to the people that are today and link to them or not, darker people, whoever they were, built these things, period. They didn't need no fucking help from no Europeans, Egyptians, none of that. Okay, so let me establish that. But what I am saying is that a change took place that was not related to what we would consider these natives, in which the language changed. Right. Which therefore we're speaking now, what they're considered native is not native, and that's where the cognates come from.
Right, but you're specifically
the culture. There has been shown, and I showed this with the Chinese, and I showed this with the Jews, that there's others, but we'll get to that were here before Columbus. Now, I'm not saying that these people. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is it's kind of narrow-minded to believe that these different types of people, and I'm going to show this, did not come here before Columbus.
Okay, so wait. What group of people?
It's not narrow-minded. It's based on the evidence.
It's based on, exactly. But what, hold on, I want him to address what people, because you said Jews, and who else was here prior to Columbus?
But I didn't just make a wild thing. Like I showed
no.
Like with the Chinese, I showed
okay, but I'm just asking for clarity. I'm just asking for clarity. You said Jews and who else?
I said Jews.
And
Chinese.
Were here in the Americas prior to Columbus?
All day long. They're not the only people that were here before Columbus. And what I'm saying, when you're talking about cultures, and I use this with Quetzalcoatl, I use this with Teotl. If you look at the narrative and the culture and the storyline, that's not something that's native to Americans. Quetzalcoatl has the same damn story as Jesus. So
and that's where I would have to intervene, because I study Mesoamerican religion and history. I mean, my grandma, she's Zapata, so she's
I can't hear you. Say that again?
I said that's where I would have to. I study Mesoamerican religion extensively. My grandma is actually Zapata, so I got.
That's perfect. So these concepts.
She's darker than half of these abos too. While they be talking shit.
I wouldn't doubt it, but what I'm saying is that these things that people are subscribing to native in this land are not native. Even when I talk to the so-called abos and I tell them, I'm like, yo, dude, this storyline, it's happened in other parts of the planet, and not only that, the linguistics match, and not only that, it's the fucking same meaning. It's one thing to make a claim, this word looks like that. It's a different claim when this word not only is spelled damn near the same, but it fucking means the exact same thing, and the sound is the same thing. And then when you attach the damn culture and custom to it, it's fucking identical.
Right.
So that's my claim, and I show that through the cognates, and I show that through.
Right. Well,
but people dismiss it because the sources are old. Okay, so I give a recent source. Now it's religious.
No, Well, let me address that. These are specific claims, right? I mean, so there doesn't.
Very specific claims.
Right. So if you're saying that the Hebrews came here, what language would they have affected? Now you alluded to. I would think that that's the reason why you alluded to the Hebrew aspect. Now what language to begin with, right? So you're saying that our language specifically was the one that would have had this input.
Yes, because that's one of, if not the last remaining one that's not extinct from Proto-Ural-Aztec.
Right. Okay. So that's we can address that. And what other evidence, what other standards?
Can I tell you what?
And it's not just Hebrew. It's not just Hebrew.
And that. Okay.
Mm.
Which goes with now. This is what I mean by you just can't use DNA. When you look at language, and I heard you on the other live where you dismissed the cocaine mummies. All right. When you look at the fact that there's Buddhist statues that's found here, fucking cocaine mummies. When you look at all of this shit.
Where?
But wait. Let me just
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
We're removing that Buddha comment from the evidence.
I'm not removing it from the video though. It's gold.
I present my evidence and I'm fuck the Buddhist thing. It's but there's evidence that these Chinese came through the Feng trial and they were Buddhists. But forget the Buddhists.
So you have a hard time believing Siberians came here, but you believe Chinese people were here?
I never said Siberians didn't come here. I never said that. No.
It would have been more possible. It would have been more possible for the Chinese and
to be fair to him.
I'm trying to.
I'm just asking for clarification.
Nah, but y'all do this to jokes to sidebar. I never said that. The claim is if Siberians were the first to come in, there's a difference than never coming in. Big difference.
Okay, but that's why I'm asking. Like, do you feel okay? So I'm asking, do you feel that Chinese people were one of the first people to come here? Which, yeah, you're right, hun. Like, yeah, even if we wanted to make that claim, which we know, come on, it's not true. But even if we want to make that claim, fine, it would make more sense because they were Asian. Oh well, I mean, just based on the evidence and migration patterns, like we know, like that's not it. But that aside, I'm just asking, do you feel like Chinese people were here earlier than what? Do you have proof that they came here in the 5th century to America? Well, what proof?
During that time frame, 5th century, that the Chinese didn't come here, I'll go on live and say it.
Based on what? But okay, but hold on, hold on. I want him to clarify. Like, are you? I want to clarify. Hold on. I want to clarify your position. My question to you is: do you feel like Chinese people were one of the first people to come here? That's all I'm asking.
No, I never said that.
Okay, I want a clarification.
No, I was very specific because we were talking about this ain't about ancient. This is about language, culture, stories, and customs. And I'm telling you, I'm giving you references in terms of which people, them coming here.
And you know, China has more than 17 ethnic groups, so you have to be very specific which Chinese people, because there's Han Chinese, there's people who live in China who aren't Chinese, like the Manchus that live in northeastern China. You have to be very specific if you're going to make those kind of claims.
I don't have to be specific.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
If the claim is nobody came before Columbus, I don't got to be specific at all. Any Chinese came here, that's proven wrong. So I don't have to be specific.
But you need to reference for the Chinese. This is where I wanted to go to that little bit, because for the Hebrews, we said that the alleged evidence that we're not here to prove to disprove. We can prove a negative, right? So you can tell us that
exactly.
That you're saying that there was nobody here, no foreign population came here before Columbus. Prove it, like that's proving a negative. But we don't even have to go there. I'm giving you the
you know what I mean, but
but you have every right to
That's all I'm asking is for him to present the evidence, but the burden of the claim is not on us.
Yeah, though. Yeah, okay, so. So for the Hebrew claim specific, you already mentioned. So we can address the Nahuatl language.
All right, let's stick to the Hebrew. What I'm saying is.
Can I tell you my objection to with how you presented it, or what you presented, and how they their methodology. When you do comparative linguistics, you can't use multiple languages to compare it to one language. You're supposed to do one language to one language. And the chart I saw you bring up had Egyptian.
Wait, you're breaking up. Say that again.
You're supposed to compare one language to one language, right? The chart I saw you bring up, it had Egyptian, it had Arabic, and it had Hebrew. It had these three languages to compare to one language, and then it
That's right. My boy, I cut you off.
Did it not have Arabic and I know it had Arabic and Hebrew for sure, but I thought I heard you also mention Egyptian.
That's a mislabeling because people like Pablo and clowns like Mark talk shit. So I just fucking flooded this shit with show that it's not just one. But my original claim, I focused on Hebrew and Hebrew only. When they talked shit because they were so arrogant, I said, this shit is so not native, I'll stack other languages just to prove it to you and then post what compares.
But if I could explain why Joseph, why he stated that when you are comparing the influence of one language to another, like a specific input from one language to another, like influence, direct overlap, the reason why you would have to compare 1 to 1 as opposed to 1 to 12 is because when you do that 12 to 1 thing, it is extremely easy to end up in what they call false cognates.
That's exactly the word I use.
False cognates, and it's extremely easy to fall into.
And it's because it gives the appearance that there is a plethora of similarities when there might not be. Because you're using several languages.
And above that, let me tell you what a linguist would say. On top of it, that's just false cognates, right? But on top of that, there's a whole vocabulary of words that has been passed down from every population on Earth because they are what they consider traditional words that are extremely hard to change.
Mama, papa. And this is what I explained to him with the Yuto Aztecan, because the native people were at one point in Central Asia. You see that haplogroup X there. You see what's the other one that's there? Damn, I can't think of it right now.
You have haplogroup Q. Q is there.
He would have to rule out that the same people that brought these cognates, or the people that brought these cognates into the Yuto Aztecan, are not the same people that also back migrated into Northeast Africa and the Levant. You would have to rule that out to show that it was some type of direct transmission. It could have been that these people that spread out from Central Asia took these cognates into each population.
No problem. But before we even get to that, though, I want to address what y'all said. You can't just say, okay, I said mama here and they said mama there, and that's a relation. That's not good enough. You got to pass the shit with a certain set of rules. And those rules, 3 major rules are spelling. Is the spelling similar? Second, does it sound similar? Third, is the meaning the same? If those 3 things pass, it's not a matter of mama, papa. Primarily,
I don't think spelling is part of that, because when you anglicize words, you could get different spellings. Even if you're doing.
I mean, in the context of that time,
that violates the rule of language, and that's what I'm saying. The fact that's what I'm saying. Certain suffixes and prefixes, certain letters in combination, they have a meaning in specific to certain cultures that's not in other cultures. Like every region has a lingua franca, and that lingua franca means even if you don't speak the same language as me, there's an overall dominant language that some things relate to that we can use in order to conduct commerce.
Okay, so
in a given geography, that addresses your haplogroups and your genetics.
Okay, so let me ask you a question because I'm very curious about this claim that you made that supposedly there were Chinese people in the 5th century, I think BC, if I heard you correctly. I hope that he could show the connection or the trade and commerce of where these Chinese people were spreading a culture that obviously is not present in the Americas that we could compare to ancient China. So where do you get this from?
No, it's not present in the way you want it to be.
No, it's not. It's not what I want to be. It's what the evidence shows. I don't dictate it. It's what the evidence demonstrates.
That's false because the evidence that I showed the language is linked to not just Hebrew but Egyptian,
Chinese,
in itself is
Mandarin, and Cantonese.
Was the evidence for the Chinese? It was also linguistic.
No, it wasn't linguistic. Well,
that's what I'm asking. I'm asking the linguistic part.
No. I can't. The reason why I don't add the Chinese with the language is because the words that were linked to the Chinese were primarily linked to deities and gods.
Can you provide examples?
I can't give an overwhelming and say, oh, it's Chinese, but with Hebrew and Egyptian, I can give hundreds of words that have the same meaning.
Okay, because I only bring it back up because you said you could prove for a fact and bet me on live, and I take that I take those claims. If you could prove for a fact and bet on live that there was a Chinese presence in the 5th century BC, I'd like to see evidence for it. That's all that is basically all I'm asking for, and it's a fair question.
I'm curious, was it linguistic or is it some type of material evidence?
No, the evidence I posted was that the Chinese were present in the Americas before Columbus.
Okay, which evidence is that?
What was the evidence?
I'll send it to you. I posted it online 6 times.
Okay, but without us having
to read it, can you give us an example? Because I'm curious to hear this example. Like without us having to scroll through it, just give us one off the top of your head. Like what is the commonality linguistically, culturally, artifacts?
Me and you, I went through this with her in the first live, and I got baited. So now whatever I say, I'm sending you shit to y'all. So you can
it's not even about baiting you. We're just asking for evidence. If you're going to produce a claim, you need to have evidence to back up your claim.
Because I can't even. I can't read anything from where I'm at right now, so I'm just trying to hear like what was it? Was it was it the Buddha? Is that what you're talking about?
No, not the Buddha. They were Buddhist monks that took a voyage from China here.
Right, and what evidence is there? Because for the Hebrews, you said that there was linguistic evidence, right? I mean, it's a simple thing. You said that there was linguistic.
You're breaking up. Say that again.
I said you said for the Hebrews there was linguistic evidence, right? I mean, it's not.
Yes.
Okay, so.
What is the evidence for the Chinese?
For the Buddhist monks or whatever, what type of is it linguistic evidence? Is it what type of material evidence?
Is it cultural? What is it?
My claim was that they. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
My primary claim with the Chinese was that they came here before Columbus.
Okay.
But we're asking how.
But we're asking you again for the
What led you to make that assertion that they were here before Columbus? What is the evidence?
And that's why I'm going to send it to you because I'm not falling for this trap.
It's not a trap. It's a question.
But I can't read it right now. I can't read.
It's okay. Hold on. It's not a trap. It's a question. It's a simple question. All we're asking is for one evidence. You pointed out the Hebrew. You said that you could show linguistic ties to the America. Okay, fine. We'll entertain that. But what is the evidence when you're making an assertion that supposedly Chinese monks came to America in the 5th century BC? What is the evidence?
Like, did they leave a shoe? What was it?
Right. Like,
I told you I'll send it to you.
Okay, but
I can't read it right now, so I just want you to tell me because I can't examine it. I just want you to say it.
You don't got to read it right now. You could look at it and pick it
I
up.
want to know why you didn't feel the need to send us an article when you spoke of it.
no one took the chance to look at it and study it. So
okay, but we're asking questions about it. You said you studied it, right? So when someone asks you for evidence, it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna send it to you later. Like you should just have that on hand and be like, bam, this is what it is.
Because we did this the first time, and what happened?
Yeah, send it to the Hangouts, and I have my screen share on. So if anything, we'll look at it.
We send it to you right now.
In the Hangouts, okay. I don't have.
Yeah. I just gotta switch the screen momentarily. See if I get it.
Because for the Hebrew argument, I gave another possible route for how cognates could end in either language.
I have a strong feeling this is going to be the cultural comparative methodology.
I'm in agreement with that. I am in agreement with that.
Say it again.
I have a feeling it's going to go the route of the cultural comparative methodology.
Explain.
The cultural comparative methodology is when you take similar philosophy, similar set of ideas of beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Like religion.
Like with religious ties and so on and so forth. And even pantheons, I can even break down why pantheons exist. That's not the archetype that they're built.
Not what this is. That's not what this is.
Okay, perfect. So then I hope it's material.
Because the language thing follows certain rules, so it's not about overlapping just to overlap.
So it's based on language, right?
No,
with the Hebrews, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if the same population went east and west, and they took these like words for water or different family member positions, if they diffuse from that position, then it's possible that
I have a whole book on the comparisons between Nahuatl and Indo-European languages. Book on that. And
Okay.
There are similarities, and the anthropologists that wrote it specify that these are merely comparisons for the sake of showing similarities between different populations. He was not suggesting in any way whatsoever that they had direct contact with one another.
Right.
Generous enough to say that. Whereas I hear many other people that propose other linguistic ties immediately jump into they had to be here because these are the continents. You see what I'm saying?
No, I never said they had to be there. The language, I was just go ahead.
No, I was going to say, even though there's no body plan behind it, none of that, but they feel that linguistics is more enough to prove that point of the presence. Now, you were about to say that you're not saying that they were present here, so then how did they get the message?
I'm not saying that the language connection is because they made contact. I never said that.
Okay.
So how did the language get there?
Ancestor? Are you claiming that he was a common ancestor?
Like I started this live, you don't necessarily need contact for cultures to overlap.
Right, but that's not anything different than what we've been saying all along. I mean,
so I don't.
Yep.
For cultures, but you do need to show a connection with language. So you need to demonstrate how the language got there.
I mean, even if you point out that they share a common ancestor with a proto language that it's a branch, a separate branch off. You're very far away from the Middle East.
Right. Like we can look at Indo-European languages and show that they have commonality with Hindu with Hindu script or Sanskrit, but because they're relatively next to each other in the same region. But when you're claiming that Hebrews brought a part of their language from the Middle East to the Americas, then you have a tougher job of proving that connection. You got to prove it. What?
So that's why I suppose it could be from if these are in fact cognates. It could be diffusion, because if
cultural diffusion.
Wasn't his mother or his grandmother was, when they test her DNA, it comes back to Central Asia. So these people were spreading out from that location anyway, probably for a long time. So if there are cognates, that could be one of the reasons for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be that someone came from Egypt or Israel. And
exactly, that's my point. It's not about contact necessarily.
But that's relative to the time period.
I don't see the relevance in that bringing that as Hebrew up specifically, because at that point you can bring up any language and find it.
No, you can't bring up any language, because you can't.
Why not?
Haphazardly take two random languages and they have the same meaning, similar spelling, and similar sound. Like, you can't do that. Like, you can't just go.
Okay, but when you go like those schools, that is contact. Okay, that's not common ancestry. Okay, and when you're telling me that I cannot do that with other languages, when I just said there's a Cuban anthropologist, Frank Diaz, who wrote a whole book on cognates between now what specifically and Indo-European languages, and even he went into suffixes and prefixes and so on and so forth. So this double standard that you have there, I don't see it.
Either way, you would kind of have to prove that there was some form. There had to be, like, you would have to prove there's some form of contact, because time periods matter, right? Like, if we're talking about a group of people who were migrating to the Americas, let's say 13,000 years ago, I'm pretty sure they weren't going to meet people who were speaking Aramaic 13,000 years ago in the Middle East.
That's what I'm saying. Your standards don't fit comparative linguistic analysis.
No, it's language, because I am a linguist, and it's language. It's just languages evolve, and you have to show how one language connects to another, and you have to prove some form of contact. When you're talking about something that's Hebrew, which is Semitic, and you want to say that they're comparative to Mesoamerican language, which are part of a completely different, separate language family, you have to show the connection.
Objectively, prove me in the scientific aspects of comparative linguistics where that has to happen. Show me that. Send me the language that you have to have contact to show that languages overlap to the point where they borrow from another language.
Well, I can give you an example. Look, no, I can give you an example off the top of my head. For example, like in Japan, right? The way they address their mothers and their fathers, they'll be like, okay, they'll say papa and mama. Same thing in Spain. They'll say papa and mama. These people never made contact, right? They universally, they say these things, right? So I agree with you in the essence of, okay, yeah, necessarily they don't have to make contact to have those kind of specific words. But when you're talking about Hebrews and Mesoamericans having similar words when they're in a completely separate language family, that's very hard to prove. We know Spanish people, Portuguese people were trading with the Japanese, at least in the 15th century. So they had, at some point, they did have some contact and they were trading words. But you have to demonstrate, where did these Mesoamericans absorb these Semitic language, these Semitic words that you're claiming that is in the dialect? At what point?
What you're saying is not in the rules of comparative linguistic analysis. If you show me that's the case, I will say I'm wrong. But you're making up a standard that doesn't.
No, I'm not making up a standard. I'm just showing that I'm showing you a connection. Portuguese, Spanish people, look.
Wait. To be objective, you're doing the opposite of what you do in other areas of science. If you're gonna claim something scientifically, it has to be based on a standard. Show me in the comparative linguistic comparison of languages where what you're saying is part of the standard. Then I will say, okay, add that. But you have not done that. I posted what the rules are for comparative linguistics, and I've applied.
But hold on, because then you're entering. Hold on. You're saying I'm not demonstrating. I just gave you an example of contact. I'm showing you. I can give you another one too. I can give you another example. No, I can give you, but let me give you the example. No, but no, I'm showing you that I am showing you the way people exchange cultures with one another and how they influence each other with words, right? Because I think we can all agree. I think we can all agree that cultures like, for example, the Europeans and Native Americans and Africans, right? In the Caribbean, we have an influx of different words borrowed from all these cultures because all these cultures made contact with one another at one point in time. Same thing with the Japanese and the Portuguese. The same thing with the Spanish and the Arabs. The Spanish in itself has an influx, a plethora of Arabic words, dialect introduced into that. And the only reason why it's there is because you had Arabic Moors conquering Spain for 800 years. They made contact. The Japanese and the Portuguese made contact. Show me the connection between Hebrews and Mesoamerican people and introducing a Semitic language into the Mesoamerican people without contact. That is your burden. You have to prove that. That is your burden. I gave you 3 examples of people of cultural diffusion and people making contact with one another. I gave you 3 examples. It's not a fallacy. It's not a fallacy. It's part of history. You can look up this history easily.
I think that's what
rules to language, and what you're saying is not a part of the rules of comparing languages.
I think
it's simple.
I gave you 3 examples. Give me one example of contact. That's all I'm asking.
Your example, if they're outside the rules of science.
It's not